that snow. So talk a little bit about what I'm going to talk about today. Go over a PSC safety moment, something that we do at PSC before we start every meeting. Talk about our infrastructure, our customer resources for everybody, how we restore power, and things our customers should know about, and then a little bit about our outage communications. So as I mentioned, before we start every meeting, PSC always starts with a safety moment. So I'd like you to see, this is the psc.com/safety. This is the site that you will come to. This talks a lot about our electric safety and our gas safety resources. This particular site that you see right here is for our customers, reminding them to look at their generators. If they have generators in their home, make sure that they're operating correctly, make sure there aren't any faulty wires. Reminding also customers that it was fall season. We used to see a large uptick of landscaping during the fall, so making sure that you call 811 before you dig to plant any plants or trees. In addition to that, obviously, down wires, make sure we're staying away from down wires. If we see them during storm season or storm events, don't touch them. Call 911 if you see any wires down. You never know if they're going to be energized. Lots of resources on this particular website. And then for our first responders, we also have on the same website, psc.com/safety. At the very bottom on the far left, you'll see responder training. It's kind of hard to see on the screen, but at the very bottom it's highlighted in dark green. It says responder training. This is the site that comes up. We have our energy restoration plan. This gives a very high-level overview of how PSC restores power, our priorities, and how we go about that restoration and our processes for that. In addition to that, we also have some videos on this particular website for our first responders and other resources for them, some contacts within Puget that our first responders can connect with. Okay. So let's talk a little bit about our readiness. PSC has over 800 employees that have emergency response assignments. These assignments can vary from becoming a damage assessor, actually going out and looking at the damage that is occurring during these storm events, or you're in the storm base doing communications, which is something that I do. You guys have heard from me in the past during storm events where I might come to a city council meeting and talk a little bit about the event that had occurred over the last 24 hours. Also, you receive emails from me during these events. Again, it's just our communication out to our electeds and our customers about what it is that's happening during that storm event. Along with our employees, we have 7 regional storm bases that are managed by our local storm response. These storm bases here in Whatcom County is located off of Iowa Street at our service center. We also have a main base in Burlington, which is our Skagit Service Center. There are 24/7 teams that staff both of these bases. Depending on how bad the event is, we may have teams just staffing Whatcom, or we may have a team just staffing Skagit or Burlington, or we may have teams staffing both of these particular locations. And I know that says would be local coordination, but it's really supposed to be Whatcom local coordination. My apologies. And then the last one there is we have our Emergency Coordination Center, or ECC. When our event becomes so large that our local coordination centers or our local storm bases cannot handle the event, it's too large, we have too many outages, our Emergency Coordination Center opens down in Redmond. Again, that's a 24/7 dedicated site with 24/7 dedicated on-call teams. They help with resource coordination. If we need to get additional crews in that are not our PSC or Patelco contractor crews, let's say we call crews in from Canada, maybe from Oregon or Idaho, this particular ECC, that's what their job is to find those additional crews and resources for everybody out in the field. So pre-storm preparations. So you kind of saw the infrastructure of what we use to respond to our storms. This is what we do to prepare. So about mid-August, early September, we start getting our employees ready. We give them additional training on their emergency storm response role. So if they're a damage assessor, they actually go out and start looking at equipment to look at it again, make sure that they're aware of all the new equipment that may have been installed over the year, just reacquaint them with what they need to be looking at and the forms that they use to report the damage. And then we start to look at our response coordination as a whole. So our storm response bases come together. They do tabletop exercises. They also do functional exercises where they actually call people and go through the whole process, make sure that they're ready for this year. In addition to that, we do outreach presentations like today, and we also do that with our our Skagit County or Whatcom County emergency coordination departments. We exchange contact information. We make sure that everybody has our number and that we have their number. And and just reacquaint everybody with the process and how PSE operates. So how do we restore power? So I mentioned our energy restoration plan at the very beginning as a resource. This is a very high level, and you'll see this in that particular plan. But our order of priority is we always look at our transmission lines first. That's where we generate the electricity, and it comes through to us on that transmission line from the generation facilities. But then we look at our substations. Our transmission lines go to our substations, so we look at our substations, make sure that there's no damage there that we need to repair. And then from our substations, we look at what we call our distribution systems. The distribution systems is what provides power to our customers, our businesses, and our residential customers. Once we look at those particular pieces of our infrastructure, make sure that they're whole and they're solid, we look at our customer restoration priorities. So essential services always come first, our hospitals, water treatment facilities, first responder facilities, and then we look at how we can restore the largest number of customers at once. So if we have a large number of customers, let's say 50, that we can restore right away, or we have one customer at the end of a line, we're going to restore those 50 first, and then we'll go back and restore that one customer. So a couple of things customers should know about how we restore and what you might see out in your neighborhoods. We have two types of trucks. We have a PSC truck. It's what we call our serviceman. There's one person in that truck. Then we have a Patelco lineman, or a service provider. You kind of see a picture there, and that's a dual logo truck. So it'll say PSC and Patelco. When you see the PSC servicemen, that's typically who you'll see first. They're out looking at the damage. If you've called in an outage, they're going to come out and see what's causing that outage. If they can make the connection and restore your power, the serviceman will do that, or that PSC logo truck. If the damage is too great, that PSC serviceman is most likely going to leave your community, and then we'll have a Patelco lineman come in. If you see your PSC truck leave and you still don't have power, that means typically that the damage is too great for them to manage, and they have to wait a little bit longer for a Patelco or a crew team to come in and restore that power. Just know that if you see them leave and the Patelco crew comes in, you can expect the outage to be just a little bit longer, a couple hours. Other things to know about, here in Whatcom County, we're piloting an outage notification system for our customers. If you lose power, we're working on providing emails to our customers that we believe that they'll see on their phone and their email, not necessarily at home on your computer because you don't have power, but we are piloting that program to see how well our customers respond to those email notifications. There are two ways that that we know that you have power. One is if you actually report your outage and tell us, hey, I don't have power. And two is if you actually have if we have a substation outage or a circuit outage. Those are the two easiest ways for us to know that you do not have power. It's why it's really important that you report your outage. Even though you received an email that says, hey, we know you're without power, sometimes during storm events, it's very difficult to go back and get everybody as a whole. We do our best to look at our maps to make sure we've got everybody, but sometimes customers can get overlooked where we think we've restored them and maybe we haven't. If it's been several hours, you've already reported your outage, please call us back and let us know that you still do not have power. PSC.com, if you haven't seen our outage map, this is the PSC.com website that you'll see. At the very bottom, there's an orange block that says report an outage. If you click on that, you will end up in front of our outage map. You can also report your outage before you get to this map, but you'll also see this outage map on that same page. On that map, you can get an idea of where other outages have been reported. You'll see the circles there. There's several circles that say 3s and 2s. If you click on that circle, you get a detailed description of that particular outage. And that's what that second window is there. And it's too small to read, but essentially it'll tell you when the outage was reported, if a crew has been on site, and the estimated time of restoration. You can also see this outage map on your MyPSC app. If you go to any of your app stores and type in Puget Sound Energy in the whole, not just PSC, but Puget Sound Energy, you can find our app, download it, and actually see that outage map. You do not have to sign into your account to see the outage map. Okay, last slide here, talk a little bit about our Whatcom reliability projects. We've had 2 substation upgrades here in the county. One in particular was up in Linden, and then the other we are looking at upgrading our Bellingham substation, which is over off Iowa Street near our service center in 2018, which basically means new wires, new equipment, new poles, that type of thing. So it's better reliability and quicker response or restorations to our customers. The other thing to take note is we are installing what we call trip savers. These are typically installed in more rural areas where it's heavily treed. If the tree comes down and hits a wire, these trip savers will take about 30 seconds to 3 minutes to see if they can actually restore power. Maybe that limb hit the tree or hit the wire and it fell off. See if they can't restore it without having a serviceman come back out and close that circuit back in. We've installed about 50 of these devices up in Whatcom County, and we're hoping that it'll help restore power quicker and save our servicemen additional time coming out. I tried to get through that as fast as I could. Are there any questions?
Councilmember Murphy.
After living in Washington State all my life, what I can say is I just feel like we've never had this many storms, and it's becoming a more regular occurrence. And I really express complete support for Puget Sound Energy and the responsiveness that you guys have stepped up with, because I'm sure it's so tough to manage all those schedules as you're taking employees away from their families and their personal lives. And so I also really hope that, you know, our city crews and also PSC staff will certainly remain safe. And I definitely appreciate the website improvements. I manage a youth department, and it's really nice to be able to tell if we can help take care of our families if power is going to be restored that way. So I just lift my hands and thank PSC for all the ways you've helped our community.
Thank you, Councilman Murphy.
Councilmember Barker.
A few slides back, you were discussing how you prioritize going to turn the power back on or to fix what issues happen. If when the power goes out, and then those of us that have mapped our neighborhood and are going out to make sure everybody's doing okay with the power out, if we've said that our power's off, if we've alerted PSC, is there a way for you all to know how many people have also lost their power, or should we be getting each of those neighbors to also call in?
You really should have each of those neighbors call and report their outage. It's much simpler. That way it's all into our system, and we're able to monitor that a whole lot more effectively than just one group email, if that makes sense. One group notification.
Thank you.
Any other questions, council members? Okay.
Great. I'd like to ask Nick Hartridge to come up. He's going to give you another presentation. So you got to see the storm and operations side, and Nick is going to give you an update on the green energy side.
Thanks, Lynn. Hi, Council. Good to see you again. It's been a while. I forgot how fun these council meetings are. I forgot that you're approving these wonderful budgets to improve our civic infrastructure, and I mean, afternoon meetings are a nice way to do it. So I'm being totally serious, by the way. So yeah, that's awesome. Many of you know who I am already. I'm Nick Hartrick. I'm the new outreach manager for Puget Sound Energy here in Whatcom County, and I have been doing community outreach and engagement in Bellingham for the last 15 years, and I am thrilled to be doing this with PSC and get to kind of keep the same sort of role that I have been doing, but working for this company with 2,700 employees and 1.1 million energy customers and 790,000 gas customers. Is huge. So I look forward to taking and highlighting what we're doing here in Bellingham and Whatcom County to the across the state, across the region. Lynn really focused on safety, and I'm going to talk about how we play this role in the community here. I don't think any other utility in North America is playing a role like PSC has done in Bellingham and in Whatcom County, and Pinky can probably contest to this given her role with the Georgetown Energy Prize, to see how our influence as a community really plays this fantastic role, and it's in partnerships with a lot of local organizations as well as the local businesses. PSC has helped more customers in this community save energy than any other Northwest utility, and so energy efficiency is really paramount to what our core values are. I want to share one slide with you here that I think is kind of fun, and Mark's going to address this a little bit later, so I don't want to steal his thunder, because that guy is packed full of thunderous energy, and so, you know, just to balance it out here a little bit. But this is the total production of photovoltaic or solar power generated in Washington State, and that giant dark whatever color that is on the left is Bellingham. And you can see we produce about twice the kilowatt average than the next closest city, which is Olympia. So we're producing about 3 million kilowatts a year of solar in Bellingham. That's tremendous. That is tremendous. It's about 36 kilowatts per person. And the next closest city is Seattle, and they're producing about 20 kilowatts per person. So we love challenges in this community, and I think that's something worth highlighting. Mark will dive into that a little bit later. Okay, Green Power Community Challenge. You're all very familiar with it. Through the end of October this year, we officially have over 5,000 residential customers signed up and 146 commercial customers. How does this stack on the statewide average? Bellingham, again, is leading this Green Power Community Challenge across the state. So we set a goal this year of 407 new enrollments. And we said to the city of Bellingham, hey, we'll issue you a $40,000 stipend if you hit this goal. And the stipend is a reward to use for a solar array system in the city. Did you all know that? Were you all aware of that? Yeah? Yeah? Okay. Mike? No? Okay. Yeah, he's there. So what we did is we met our goal, but not only did we meet our goal, PSE said, hey, we're going to offer you a stretch goal. And if you meet the stretch goal of 500 new signups, we're going to give you $50,000. So we did that. And that is awesome, and that's something to celebrate. And we have a check here we'd like to hand to you if we can do that. And maybe, Kelly, you want to get into a little photo? Can we do a little? Yeah. This is something worth congratulating all of the city of Bellingham on, and so just really proud of you. Yeah.
Let's go stand in front of that. Everybody.
I'm real proud of the city and the businesses and the residents who signed up. How many residents here are Green Power signups? That's awesome. Thank you so much. Yeah. I just realized that if you move, your Green Power sign up from your old household doesn't follow you. So if you have moved and haven't signed back up, you should feel the liberty to do so. So we're super thrilled. Okay. So the other thing I want to talk to you about is our sweeps campaign. And what the sweeps campaign is you've seen this claymation advertising, maybe you've seen it, you've definitely seen it on the WTA buses riding around town. This is something that I'm told that PSC is a really new style of campaign for them, but it's highly effective at getting LEDs into the hands of residents. So the goal with this campaign was to get one LED bulb in every single customer's hands in 2016 and 17. That's a huge task. Like I said, 1.1 million customers, that's not easy. So we did a bunch of mailings. People got a voucher. Many people got a voucher at home to sign this in. But Bellingham, in addition to that, Bellingham was selected as one of these communities that we sent a team of people out to go door to door, to knock on their doors and say, hey, here's what's going on with this free LED bulb. You're welcome to have one if you want. We did nearly 7,000 door knocks, and this was over the course of about a month between September 19th and October 17th. So this team of 7 all-stars went out there, knocked on the doors, were greeted by mostly friendly people, I imagine, and we're also able to do a little bit of energy efficiency tip work just to provide some details about how to make your home a little bit more efficient, especially with the winter coming up. So I'll tell you how successful it was. We were able to hand out 5,861 bulbs. And so for the life of that bulb that's in that home, we're talking one LED bulb, saves 7.5 million kilowatt hours. That's enough to power 560 homes for a year. And that's just one light bulb. And so this is a little bit of what the campaign looked like. But this is really the heart of our community here, the residents. So here's some of the communities that we reached out to. And we've got several other communities identified in 2017, and I'm hoping Linden will actually be one of them that we pursue with another sweeps campaign. So, and then the other last little part of that is we had a retail focus because, not only if we can't reach people in their homes, where else can we reach them? So we partnered with Lowe's here in Bellingham for 2 events on September 10th and then the following week, September 17th, and had PSC team at this event talking about energy efficiency and handing out LED bulbs. And just another great way to reach the community where they're at. That's all I have, unless you have any questions.
Councilmember Murphy.
So is green power why the super vanilla tastes even better at Mallard ice cream?
Yeah. It was also the inspiration for the basil mint. Yeah. Good. Okay. Thank you so much.
Council members, any other
Yeah.
questions? No? Thank you very much,
thank
Nick
you.
and Lynn. Appreciate that. That was for information only. And we're going to move to our next presentation, which is staying in our energy theme. This is an update for our 2016 Bellingham Energy Prize campaign. In fall of 2014, Bellingham Community entered the National Georgetown University Energy Prize competition for energy efficiency. Our broad partnership called, locally we call the Bellingham Energy Prize, has resulted in efficiency gains in public buildings, schools, and residences, and Bellingham is currently a top contender for the national $5 million prize. This briefing will provide an overview of 2016 activities, including residential efficiency measures, school facilities investments, and City of Bellingham sponsored activities. So we will have a presentation by Mark Garner and also by Mark Anderson from Bellingham Public Schools. Thanks, Mark.
Good afternoon, Council. Mark Gardner, Legislative Analyst, Bellingham City Council staff. I'm going to provide an overview of the Bellingham Energy Prize with a focus on this year, but a bit of an overview just to provide some context for the entire prize effort. And then Mike Anderson of the Bellingham Public Schools. He does facilities work, but also is knowledgeable about the energy education activities. He'll present that set of activities regarding what has happened in the schools. So just to provide a little bit of general overview context as a reminder, I'm sure you know this more or less, but here goes again. Yeah, the Georgetown University Energy Prize is a nationwide contest for cities with population between 5,000 and 250,000. The competition components are high performance in energy reduction over the 2015-16 period in comparison to a prior baseline, as well as a robust and believable plan for sustainability. So that's going to be even more than the performance. You have to do well with the performance. You also have to have a plan that people actually believe is going to carry forward into the future. And as PSE's presenters have indicated, we here in Bellingham are in this for the long haul. So I think we can make a pretty good argument there. The winning city will receive a $5 million prize to be used for energy-related investments, and Bellingham is currently tied for 4th place in the nation. We have not received an update for a while. They've had unfortunately, some technical problems with the prize, but we have been a very good citizen in this prize. We've provided our data on time, very solidly, and as far as we know, we're in the top 10. When we really got this prize up and rolling, we decided to make it our own. We retitled it for our own local efforts, calling it the Bellingham Energy Prize. We have a logo, a web page, and our own mascot, Kilowatt Kitty. And there you can see a Kilowatt Kitty appearing with a very large rodent at a particular event. We have a whole set of large community partners that, without which we would have not been able to get as far as we have in this project. And all of these organizations have provided tremendous support across the board. But we also have many dozens of additional partners, as I'll mention briefly as we get a little bit further into this presentation, as well as hundreds and hundreds of citizens involved in this campaign. So it's a true community effort. We have developed a project website called the Bellingham Energy Prize. Very easy to use, clear. Can't miss the messages in this web page. It's listed there for your interest if you haven't already bookmarked it and you don't visit it every day. But I recommend that you start doing that right away. And this prize, by the way, the performance period for energy conservation will be over at the end of this year. So we've got a little bit of time to finish strong here. Another thing that the campaign developed is what we're calling the Energy Center, which is a web platform. It's provided by an external company, but it's basically provides a platform for very specific local and personal information. So this is available for any citizen of Bellingham to sign up for. It's free to use. There's no external data sharing, no commercial purpose behind this. This site provides tips on efficiency and renewable energy, as well as some pretty extensive guides about what you can do after you read the tips and get convinced you should do something. It also provides real-time data on local utility rebates. So instead of having to look at static websites that occasionally have outdated information, this site reaches right into the utilities and allows you to pull their latest rebate information, which is good because if you're expecting you're going to get a $300 rebate for your refrigerator and that's not what it is, you're not happy. But this will give you real-time information. And last but not least, you can link directly to PSE and Cascade accounts to get your historical and current energy use. So it provides real-time up to the latest month information for both PSE and Cascade in one place, and it's the only site that does that. So it's a pretty good service. The direct link is on the bottom of the screen there, but you can also get there if you go to the Bellingham Energy Prize webpage, which I showed you previously. And backing up all of this is tremendous amount of outreach and community effort. There's over 75 business partners that have done promotion either with the general public or for their employees. There's a Facebook page that we have, a newspaper, many different newspaper articles, over a dozen. We've had 4 happy hour events at local breweries, various other parties at various events. There's stickers, banners, posters, T-shirts, business newsletters have been put out by many of our partners, mailers, etc. And as you can see, we've got some rather subtle advertising on this large garbage truck to the top right there. So that was pretty unmissable if you have seen that. And there's banners. So pretty much community-wide. And I really want to give Sustainable Connections a shout-out for this because they basically powered this tremendous blanketing of the community with messaging and good information about how to save energy. And just to focus a little bit on this year, in early 2016, Mayor Kelly Linville declared Energy Year in the city of Bellingham to front more broadly our Bellingham Energy Prize, but also our other energy-related activities that were going on. So this helped really power up the Energy Prize, but also noted some other campaigns that were going on, including Solarize Whatcom, which I'll talk about in just a minute, the Green Power Challenge, which you just heard about, and some pretty substantial city energy investments. So this was a great event to kick things off, and if you were there, you might have gotten some cake. So just some results, just a small sample of very large efforts, but there's many other results that we'll report on when we're done with this year, but this is just to give you a taste of the activities. The Community Energy Challenge component, which is run by Sustainable Connections and the Opportunity Council, completed 262 comprehensive energy audits, very extensive testing of housing energy efficiency, and a listing of important changes to make, and contractor referrals, scheduling of projects, etc. So pretty substantial effort. 162 unique projects, over 1 million kilowatt hour equivalent of savings of energy, and over 2,000 LED bulbs installed. There's 2 toward net zero pilots underway right now, focusing, the first one is on residential detached housing, the second is on multifamily, and this is to take things past what the Community Energy Challenge has done to go even to larger savings and move towards a housing that basically uses no energy or actually produces more than it uses. So these are important future-oriented efforts. Some other residential activities are, as you just heard, PSE has had a tremendous set of residential outreach going on there, as well as energy assessments, which they do. If anybody calls them up or sends an email, you can get an energy assessment, as well as whole set of free LEDs as apart from the campaign that they just described. And obviously there's many rebates available from PSE, same with Cascade Natural Gas. Rebates and energy saving kits have been put out throughout the community. 1,200 Bellingham residents have signed up for the Bellingham Energy Center web platform that I described a minute ago. Over 300 LED light bulbs were distributed at the Bellingham Food Bank by Sustainable Connections, Opportunity Council, and Cascade Natural Gas staff, along with information on weatherization programs. Municipal results include some very large projects. The first one is 3,700 streetlights have been replaced with LEDs with annual energy savings of over $200,000 per year and significant greenhouse gas reduction. Sustainable Connections, working with the city, is currently in the process of auditing 41 city buildings for energy savings, and so those will that work will identify projects that can be done in the future to reduce energy savings. To reduce energy use in the city. The Parks Department is currently replacing outdoor lamps with LEDs. And under consideration on the waterfront are some very innovative projects involving microhydro power production and a district energy system. And the city is, from what I can tell, the city has put as much effort as they can into moving these along, and the council has strongly supported these, and we can hope that they go forward, and the developer has an interest, and let's hope that they come to fruition. As Nick mentioned, I stole part of his slide because I love this slide, and sometimes you wonder about all these activities, do they add up to anything, and is Bellingham just tuning its own horn, or do we really outperform other cities? And this kind of shows that. But one of the reasons that we kind of moved up even further on this chart this year was the Solarize Whatcom campaign, and that was a campaign in the spring to generate new solar installs, and it was pretty successful with 47 new contracts signed, over $1.2 million were invested in new projects. A total of 311 kilowatt systems were installed, and as a result of the project participants, which included iTech Energy and Ecotech and Western Solar, donated 48 panels for a solar system at the Bellingham Food Bank. Also this year, Governor Inslee declared Bellingham a leading Northwest solar community, so we're up there in the top 10 or so with communities that have been really called out for being very solar friendly, and the reason this happened is because our own planning department had put a number of years of effort into making Bellingham very easy to work with city for solar. In fact, I was the installers were almost jumping ahead of each other to say how great Bellingham was to work with compared to other cities in the I-5 corridor. So this is real stuff, and this is the results we see. And as I mentioned, I've stolen Nick's slide, and so I told him I was going to steal it, but it's such a good one. So we also have been soliciting ideas about what to do with the $5 million when we win it. And so these are just a few samples. This was one effort. We also looked for suggestions online, and we've got many dozens of suggestions in, but these are just a few select suggestions to do additional low-income weatherization, to do some education projects to interactively educate on climate change, put more solar panels in schools, or do some affordable net zero demonstration projects. And my last slide is this one, saying if you haven't yet, please consider signing up for the Energy Center web tool. One of the things we're trying to highlight for our final report to the Georgetown University folks is how many we've signed up for this level of energy education, and most people that are signing up are doing something to save energy. So there's still an opportunity to sign up for this site. And that is my presentation. And now Mike Anderson will talk about what the schools have done.
Thank you, Mark. council members. How do you do? I know most of you, but a few of you I haven't seen before. Mayor Linville. I'm just going to read you the list of what we've done and just tell you that we're so happy to be part of this project, and the city's doing a great job kind of managing it, so we appreciate that. We've, since 2015, have replaced 350 horsepower constant drives with variable frequency drives, meaning that they respond to demand rather than run all the time. We've done lighting retrofits, changing from fluorescents to LEDs at 11 sites, approximately 275,000 kWh savings there. We've changed 8 sites to HVAC, to a unified HVAC control system, which gives us better response and more efficient control of our HVAC systems at schools. They're now all controlled remotely, so we can manage them from our home or wherever we happen to be. We can change temperature settings and start and stop times, so pretty amazing. We've put occupancy sensors in 71 classrooms in the last 2 years, and we continue to do that as we have means and opportunity. We have removed and replaced uninsulated single-wall construction, which this county did a lot in the 50s or so, but they're uninsulated single-wall construction. We've replaced 4 classrooms with R30 insulation walls and dual-glazed windows. The new schools, Happy Valley, Options High School, and Seahome High School. Happy Valley is completed, and it's designed with LED lights and high-efficiency HVAC control systems. Options is being designed with those and is under construction right now, and Seahome is being designed with those. At Seahome, we're also adding solar panels to the school. At Options, they're putting a rooftop green garden to help us use the water more efficiently and clean it before we put it into the storm system. At Happy Valley, we built in a set of interactive controls so that the kids can see a screen and see what the energy the building is using at that moment, which allows them to do projects and track the effect it has on the energy use in 15-minute intervals, thanks to Puget Sound Energy's, I forget what they call that, interval control system?
Energy interval data.
Yeah, thank you. Someone who knows. Our current ongoing work is we are currently changing out fluorescent lights to LED classroom by classroom as we have, again, means and opportunity. We're participating in promoting the Bellingham Energy Prize, school through social media. And the things we've done in that regard are send home flyers of 5 things to help reduce energy to all elementary students and their families. We've done email communications to all families featuring stories that are posted on the district's website. For those people that don't get the website, they can get an email. We have articles in our newsletter highlighting the Bellingham Energy Prize competition, and posters in all the schools, and then there were residential energy contests completed at 3 of the middle schools. And then 40 elementary school classrooms have been certified as green classrooms by Resources for Sustainable Communities. And that's thanks to Riley Grant. I don't know if you know her, but she's done a lot of work with our schools. She has worked in 2016 with 40 classrooms, a total of 885 students at 10 elementary schools, 1 Head Start program, and 1 after-school program. So that's kind of where we are. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Mike. I really want to commend the Bellingham schools on the leadership that they've shown on energy efficiency and reduction, and have done a great job with the students and getting the buildings done. So thank you very much for that work.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Does anyone else have any questions? Councilmember Murphy.
First of all, I just wanted to thank each and every individual and organization that has helped with this effort, but more importantly, I wanted to thank our council president, because she is the one who brought this entire effort forward for our community that has really helped our whole Bellingham in so many ways. So thank you.
Here, here.
Any other additional questions for Mark or anything? Councilmember Hamel.
Thanks, Mike and Mark, for the presentation. Just a question as to when the contest ends. When will we find out?
December 31st.
That's
What day is it today? The 5th, so 26 days.
Thanks. Just to add one thing, there's going to be a qualitative evaluation side too, so it will extend into 2017, but the performance period ends at the end of this month. So then we're going to have to show that we actually did what we said we're going to do and show that our plan is truly sustainable.
So just to give you an idea of the timeline, that means that our report out and et cetera will be due in March, and they won't actually announce the winner until June of 2017, so it'll be another 6 months before they do all the evaluation. But our savings has to be done by December 31st. Councilmember Lillquist.
Yeah, I also want to thank you, Pinky, for being visionary when this was brought forward. I know when it was brought forward, there was a lot of skepticism. Is it worth it? I remember talking to the people of the school district first off, and they were like, what? You know, it was something totally new. I think the thing I'd like to emphasize is we're going to win the $5 million prize, I hope, but it doesn't really matter if we don't, in the sense that every single thing we're talking about here has saved money, has saved energy, has improved our environment, put us into the 21st century in so many ways. So, I mean, we're already winners in that regard. And I think that's why I supported the program strongly from the beginning. I didn't know if we get near the $5 million, but I knew we'd get that far, you know, for all those other benefits. So thanks for everyone. Yeah.
And it really did take everyone in Bellingham, all the citizens of Bellingham, to make it happen. So I want to commend everyone for their inclusion engagement. And thank you, Mark and Mike, for sharing those details with us today. Any other comments, questions from council? No? Okay, thank you very much, gentlemen. Okay, we are going to move on to our next presentation. This is about the illegal residential uses enforcement strategies update. Now, I know this is something that everybody's been looking forward to, and it's been a very high interest in our community about how we're going to get through enforcement. So in response to the long-standing concerns in the community, the Planning and Community Development Department has been developing and implementing a coordinated strategy to address current illegal units within residential districts. This strategy acknowledges the complexity associated with the enforcement of the adopted regulations and is focused on the implementation of 3 key elements: the adoption and implementation of the Town Gown program, the implementation of the rental registration and safety inspection program, and in the enhanced enforcement to identify and bring into compliance, where possible, illegal units. This update is to provide a status on all these efforts, and I'm going to turn it over to Rick Sepler, our Planning and Community Director, and I hope I didn't steal all your thunder.
I just want to say a couple words before we start, because Rick would never toot his own horn, so it's always good for his boss to toot his horn for him. I know there's a lot of concern that people in the neighborhoods and across the city have, believing that there are a lot of violations and wanting to know what we're doing about it. And I want to give Rick some compliments on approaching this in a very professional and data-driven way. I want to make sure that we're out there making sure that the people that are living in our community are living safely, and that our neighborhoods are not having to experience a lot of disruption or the kind of illegal use that is not, well, it's not Bellingham. We like to enforce the law. So I want to give Rick, sometimes doing it well means it comes together a little bit more slowly, but I'd rather have it done right than quickly. And I think now that we have a plan in place, people are going to see more differences and get a different response because we've got our resources in place and we've got things identified. So I'll thank all the citizens who keep us on our toes, and I also want to thank our planning director, actually our community development director, I'm changing your name now, for taking this very seriously and making sure that we're doing the right and the good job.
Well, I'll start by thanking you for the kind words, and on behalf of my department, they're the folks who actually are doing the work that I am privileged to present today. As council might recall, I was before you a couple of months ago. We talked about the responses we're preparing to address an issue that's been longstanding in the community, and significant concerns have been raised regarding it. As we look at that issue, there really are 2 key components that keep resurfacing and have been available before you for a number of years. The first is dealing with illegally established dwelling units in our residential districts. And the second is issues in terms with occupants of rental facilities that exceed our family definition as defined by the municipal code. So I'm going to start off with what we're doing now and then talk a little bit about some of the things that will be coming forward within the first quarter of next year and give you a progress update on that. Enforcement on land use regulations primarily is voluntary. Unlike other regulations where you might go out and do enforcement for like speeding or other things, looking for it on patrol, we count largely on folks to comply based on a voluntary basis. And for the most part, folks do comply. However, there are folks who do proceed to do actions that aren't consistent with our adopted rules, and we rely, as most cities in Washington do, on a complaint basis with which to address those. Each of the complaints that come in are investigated by our staff. We review them point by point, and we try to determine the specific issues, get the fact pattern, and get to resolution on it. I will say that it is very complex. There are no singular fact patterns that are evident for every property. Each one is unique, and we need to sort through both its provenance, when it was established, and its occupancy. Many things are cited in things we hear from members of the community and others that seem conclusive to them. You know, the presence of certain cars that are there, lights being on, things of those nature. While those are facts that we consider, they're not conclusive and would not allow us to proceed to closure on that. We have to dig a little deeper because they aren't by themselves sufficient to move forward. In looking at that, we have done about 332 cases this year so far to date. Of those, to be fair, about 100 of those are not dealing with the two issues before us right now. They deal with folks that have expired permits but haven't gotten final occupancy permit, final inspection. That's a pretty common problem you deal with. And looking a little deeper, some of the things that bubble up, 60 of those were, 64 of them actually, were dealing with rental registration. I'm pleased to say we've been able to sort through all of those 64. So those are folks that were identified as having rental units that haven't registered with the city as part of a registration inspection. That was a key priority of council, and we can report back that we've resolved all of those units themselves. About 17 were dealing with vegetative encroachments, a pretty common thing you hear that come across our desk. And I think we have all but 3 open of those. We have received to date about 13 illegal rental complaints. That's this year. And of those, 9 remain open. We continue to investigate those. So in a sense, we do follow up, and we follow up with some good focus on these, and we tend to resolve them as they move forward. At that point, clearly, we haven't achieved the identified end, which is to address some of the behaviors and some of the uses that are out there. And we said we had to find a new toolbox, a new kit of parts that we could apply that would address it. So we are in the process of doing a number of items that we think will significantly enhance our ability to enforce the 2 issues that we identified at the beginning, the illegal units and the definition of family. The first is, while we've had code enforcement present in the police department to enforce our zoning, it's always required planners to go through that unique fact pattern and get those facts that could allow them to be enforced by the folks in our police department. We've done that sort of as an add-on to the roles of many of our existing planners. And the challenge on that is when it's not a focus, it's something you get to when time is available. We took a look at a number of the positions we had available, and were able to combine a number of part-time positions, council might recall, and to allow for a new full-time planner whose primary focus will be to follow up on these investigations, to dig down using new technologies, and to further enforce the code itself. Those new technologies are something that we bring to bear. We're able to use our GIS analysis, I think I've mentioned before, as well as an analysis of rental registration as compared to our existing zoning, and we could identify properties that may not be in compliance with our code and follow up on those specifically. And we hope to do that. Additionally, and I should say, there isn't one magic bullet that's going to allow a higher degree of enforcement to occur. It's a bunch of separate, discrete actions taken together that reduce the number and size of the problem. We are going to bring forward an amendment for consideration to Council to modify Title 20 to change the violations from criminal to civil. And the reason for that is Title 20 does not clearly state that the property owner, tenant, property management company is in violation of the law if more than 3 unrelated folks are resident on the property. This would allow us to fine those individuals, which will give greater accountability and allow our enforcement to be much more efficient. Additionally, we'll be bringing forward an ordinance that will require the number of bedrooms and occupancy limits to be listed on advertisements and listings for rental properties. This was brought to our attention. It's used in Boulder, Colorado, and it's a very effective means to establish a clear understanding of the specific number of individuals that are allowed in a unit. Additionally, we have and will require in the next round of rental registration applications that the number of bedrooms be indicated on the rental registration app itself, as well as posted in the units. And again, it was brought to our attention. This may be a good process that could allow us to get clear information out to future tenants and how that would work. We are also working to advance the Town Gown program, and that Town Gown program is a very significant way of dealing with a number of the issues identified. I will say that education is the key component to help change behaviors and change characteristics. If folks know that a use is not allowed, and those are potential tenants, they're disinclined to enter into that use, especially if they know enforcement is fairly rigorous on it. The Colorado State University experience, as you recall, we received a grant. We sent folks out there. It was the best program we could find in America. Spent 2 years before they went into very detailed on-site code enforcement to develop education in the community. We're going to try to pair continuing efforts on code enforcement, not wait 2 years. But we understand that education, that's how important the role is. You got to get the message out. But within 3 years, they were able to change culture, and we think that's a great outcome. We've had good traction on Town Gown program. We had a very successful meeting with 2 vice presidents from Western on Friday. They are very supportive of the end, and they're supportive of their role to bring together resources to provide good education for their students, for example, before they're out into the community and looking for accommodations. And I think that's a good step in that direction. We should have something again in the first quarter coming forward. So, our next steps: train the planner, starting on the 3rd of January, who will support enforcement. They will not be effective on their first day, but we'll certainly be working to get them effective as soon as possible to follow up on those issues. Follow up on all of the code enforcement complaints that come in. We have a good track record of doing so. We will continue to do so, but with new tools we could bring to bear that might get better resolution, because as you know, we're so easily stymied by some simple actions taken by those who wish to thwart our code. We'll use our new data and analysis and contact the owners of those units that appear to be illegal, and we'll follow through on each one of them till they're resolved, determined to be legal in compliance or not. We'll bring forward the proposed ordinances for your consideration, and we'll work cooperatively with Western to complete and implement the Town Gown program. I should note that the ordinances will probably be brought at about the same time as Town Gown. We'll try to bring it all together because it makes most sense when you see them all as a package rather than sort of incrementally. I'd be happy to answer questions you might have on this matter.
Councilmember Hill.
On slide 4, you indicated that there were potentially fines for the individuals that live in the unit. What tools are there to hold the landlord accountable
That's what the changes would do. You're hitting the nail on the head. Our problem now is that in many cases, the experience we found, first, there's civil penalties, civil infractions, which are a higher standard and difficult to establish a fine. And secondarily, often there's a master lease that's provided, and the management company or property owner says they had no knowledge of the occupancy of the unit. And in essence, we can, once we do investigation and find out indeed it is in violation, all parties may be subject to fine. It'll be detailed in the ordinance for consideration.
Councilmember Borneman, then Lundquist.
Yeah, this isn't a question. This is a compliment. I wanted to commend you on one of the units that had brought forward to you and neighbors had brought forward to the to your department about illegal adding of units in one of the houses. I see there's a beautiful red and black tape across the front of it shutting it down. And so I do commend you for following up on that and shutting the place down until they make the improvements in a legal way that are required instead of just the way they have done it. So it's good to see that the department is following through on some of those and
I'll
taking
pass
action.
that on to the folks who actually do that work, and we're leading the edge in making that happen.
Councilmember Lundquist.
Thanks, Pinky. I also want to offer a compliment. I support the idea of new rules and requirements to accurately report the number of bedrooms that are allowable. I think that's been an omission. It's made our job difficult. If people don't accurately report how many units or bedrooms are available in a unit, how can you hold them accountable for, misstating it? I also want to praise the idea of a full-time planning position to work on these issues. I know several years ago there was talk that maybe we could solve this problem with existing resources, and that never struck me as realistic, that this really would take some dedicated time. As you say, if it's only one of your jobs on your list, then it's only got to on a very inconsistent basis. So I really appreciate that. And overall, I think you said it yourself, we're taking this seriously, and these issues have been long-standing. And so I'm very glad, and I think it's fully appropriate that we do take this issue seriously. Thank you.
Councilmember Barker.
When you bring forward the potential changes to the Rule of Three going down from it was a criminal to a civil, is that what I heard?
It's a change in 20 to deal with these kind of infractions. Right now, as criminal, they're very difficult for us. We don't, as I understand it, and Peter can speak to it more specifically, it's difficult to make the burden of proof is different. We haven't cited exactly what the violation is. This provides a clarification under civil. Peter, did I get it half right, I hope?
Yeah, I agree that I think that's an accurate description. In some respects, for example, with the rental registration ordinance, we basically cast the net fairly broadly, and anyone who's responsible for the illegal activity, and to identify the responsible individual is an important aspect of that for any sort of violation, and that would be part of it, really looking at that as well as making it a civil infraction.
Well, go ahead. Go ahead. No, I just want to thank Rick for taking this on and really following through with it and bringing it forward. I think we're way ahead of the game. And to you and your staff, thank you. And when you first came here, this was dumped on your lap, and you have done a great job. So thank you very much.
Go ahead, Councilmember Barker.
So I've tried to look up the history of the Rule of Three, or no more than three unrelated persons, and it seems like it was decades ago when we had different social norms. And I'm wondering, as you bring that back, if that's something that the council would like to discuss further, if that's something that's still within the social norm that we'd like to continue having this ordinance on the books, or if it's something that there might be something that gets at what people are wanting from that ordinance that's easier to enforce but doesn't discriminate against people who might not be living in a related relationship by the law?
What I can say is there have been substantial changes in the nature of family in America. And I think it is likely that a discussion will happen before this body, a policy discussion on that issue at some time in the future. The Rule of Three is that cities have the ability, cities and other jurisdictions that provide zoning, to establish a limitation on unrelated people. That was upheld by the Supreme Court. in the Belterra decision. That was one where a group of Penn State students were living together as a family unit. And the Supreme Court in the split decision did say to preserve the sanctity of the neighborhood's character, cities have the ability, as well as other jurisdictions that have zoning power, to regulate family. I do think we do need to discuss that. And the reason for that is the changing nature of family itself, and I think it will be one that we probably should look in the next year or so. It doesn't affect our enforcement efforts in this program, but it is something that inevitably we'll have to address as our communities change. I'm reminded that the nuclear family, mom, dad, and kids, is the minority in America now, that most families are quite different.
Councilmembers Murphy, then Lillquist.
To take it a little further, I feel like our community problem is overcrowding in residential units, and that's the bigger issue versus trying to prove whether people are related or not, or get to the bottom of that. So I would love an effort more focused on, and that's why I love seeing that we would have a declaration of how many bedrooms there are and what the occupancy would be. That's more what I'm interested in to deal with the overcrowding issue.
Councilmember Lillquist.
Just an observation. Our definition of family is very broad. Aunts, uncles, cousins, nephews, nieces, anybody and everybody who is considered part of the same very extended family. And you can also have unrelated member living with you as well. I mean, it's a pretty broad definition right now of what we allow in single-family areas.
Councilmember Hamel.
Just to have a sense of item 3 there, what is the penalty for the civil infraction? Do you have a sense of what that range would be?
That will be up to council ultimately. I believe in the rental registration ordinance, the civil infraction, I think for the first offense was a $250 penalty, if I remember correctly. And sometimes then you increase the penalty if you don't get compliance. And there's different ways to approach it, but that's ultimately for council to decide.
Thank you.
Council members, any other? Okay. I do want to add to that, thank you, Rick, for taking this on. And I know it's been really, really important for the people of Bellingham that enforcement is something top of mind. And so I think they'll be happy with some of the changes that we're making. And of course, that won't happen overnight, but we are heading in the right direction. So thank you to your entire team for implementing all of these things.
If I might just follow up and thank you for the kind words. What I would say is that we move very carefully and deliberatively because our burden of proof and the facts we need to assemble have to stand very close scrutiny. And quite frankly, I'm sure you'd all agree that's what you want government to do, not rush to judgment. That may, to some degree, frustrate some folks who see us take time on an investigation, but I think that's intrinsic to the nature of how we want our governments to act and be very thoughtful, considerate, fact-based, and then come to conclusion and not rush to judgment. So that's the way we're going to proceed, I think, and I think it models ourselves on how we perceive ourselves as a city. Thanks.
Thank you, Rick. Everyone else? Okay. Thank you, and that was for information only. We are going to move to our fourth item today. This is an ordinance of the City of Bellingham regarding Planning Commission membership, amending Section 2.42.020 of the Bellingham Municipal Code. Consideration of an ordinance of the City of Bellingham regarding Planning Commission membership, amending the BMC regarding the makeup of Planning Commission members so that no more than 3 voting members of the Commission may engage principally in the buying, selling, developing, construction of, or investment in real estate for profit. On November 14th, the Council asked staff to insert Councilmember Hamel's language into the ordinance for further consideration. The Legal Department added language to clarify the intent and effect of the ordinance, and I'm going to hand this over to Terry Borneman.
Yes, thank you, Pinky. Yes, as you stated at our last meeting, Commissioner Hamel offered new language in an addition, which is subsection C in the packet that was approved by the council to move forward, and the attorney's office offered added subsection E and section 2. In having conversations with City Attorney Alan Mariner, who was working on this. I had talked with him about subsection E and language in it, because there was some, what? Oh, subsection F. I'm sorry. Yes. Can't read from this distance. Need better prescription. Yeah, subsection F. And there was some confusion about the word guiding in this, relating to the sections C, D, and E above are for the purpose of guiding the mayor and city council. Could this be misconstrued to read that section D wasn't firm, but just a guiding principle? So in talking with Mr. Mariner, he had suggested that we remove the word guiding so that that section would read the desired composition and limitations regarding membership set forth in subsection C, D, and E above are for the purpose of the mayor appointing and the city council confirming planning commission members. Subsection C, D, and E shall not provide a basis for challenging any activity of the commission in the execution of its powers and duties. So I would like to offer that change to the council. I'd like to make the motion that change be made, of removing that with that language put in that. So I would move that.
So is the motion just to change the language, or the motion is for the ordinance?
It's just, at this point, just to change that so we can discuss
the ordinance. Okay, so we are voting on the amendment to the ordinance on item number E in the ordinance. F, sorry. See,
yes,
now
I know.
Yeah.
I'm a confusing element.
So again, we are just voting on the change, the verbal change in the amendment. Okay, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 7-0.
And then it was my understanding that Michael had a couple changes on that.
They're really in the manner of clarifications and I hope improvements. Thanks, Terry, for making that more kind of substantive one. They both have to do with Section D. One of them refers to contractors, and there's like so many million different kinds of contractors. I think we mean construction contractors. And so I'm going to make a motion that we insert the adjective construction before contractors in Section D, but I want to make another change as well. So it's near the bottom. There's a long list of occupations: consultants, architects, appraisers, contractors, and landscapers. There's so many different kinds of contractors. I think we mean construction contractors. Also in that section, in discussing it with another one of our city attorneys, Mr. Rufato, he said that there's a possibility someone could misread it or try to read it as applying to someone who had clients who were also principally involved in real estate development or interests. So if you were an accountant and had a couple clients who were principally involved in it, did it apply to you too, you the accountant? And so to remove that ambiguity, I'm going to suggest a change in the second sentence, which says this paragraph also applies to professionals, consultants, and advisors. Instead of saying who contract directly with clients and customers that engage principally in, I would change that to strike who contract directly with, and then also later word that. So it now reads, this paragraph applies to professionals, consultants, and advisors for whom a majority of clients and customers engage principally in buying, selling, developing, construction, or investment in real estate for profit. I emailed that change around to council members earlier. Hopefully you've had a chance to look at that. I know Mr. Rufato received a copy of that. So I would make a motion for those two clarifications to Section D.
Second. We have a motion in front of us, and again, this is to change the language in the ordinance. This is an item number D. Any discussion before we take the vote on that? Okay. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 7-0. Councilmember Barker.
In looking at the Portland language, it was buying, selling, and leasing. And I know we have an issue, or at least a concern within a couple neighborhoods of predatory leasing that they feel like is happening. So I was just interested in the development of this, why the leasing term got left out.
This is the way we wrote it. We didn't take Portland's.
Was there consideration, or was there a reason maybe we didn't feel like the leasing
No, there
agent should
wasn't.
be held in there?
This is how we wrote it. We didn't take Portland's. You know, there was other sections. That's why we didn't limit it to 2 people. We said 3 people and others. You know, that was just a part of the guiding principle.
Do you think the leasing would be something you would want to lump into this, since it?
Councilmember Lillquist.
Well, I'm just thinking that the planning commissions and its zoning decisions, I think it really applies to changes in zoning that lead to new development. It really is more about new development and changes in construction. So I'm at the moment happy leaving out leasing, because you lease existing properties for which there's no zoning changes ever involved. Why reach further than we need to?
Rental registration came through the planning commission, so somebody that leases a lot of properties, I mean, if this is about buy-ins and influence. So I just want to, we cited the Portland, so I want to make sure that we're being clear on what our intentions are, and if that's something that there's a concern with council. I just wanted to ask the question.
Councilmember Borneman.
Yes. With the changes that were approved, I would like to move approval of this ordinance.
Second.
Councilmember Parker.
So we had a public comment, and I think we had a comment, Jean, when somebody had walked up to the dais when this first came out, of if this is going to go to the public for public comment. Is that, I know it's not a mandated process, but it's certainly something I'd like to hear what the rest of the community thinks about it.
I have a comment, and then Councilmember. Personally, I think I would feel a lot better if there was a public hearing about it. I've heard as much emphasis on one side as another, and I kind of feel uncomfortable about passing this all on my own. Not on my own, but without that kind of opportunity. So that is something I would support. Councilmember Borneman.
Yeah, we've gotten considerable public comment on this. This has been out here for a few weeks. We've received literally hundreds of comments. We've received, at least officially in the mail thing, 2 against this. We've received letters with hundreds of support of this. We've received comments from the League of Women Voters, from ex-members. I mean, we've received a lot of public input and public comment. We can take it another step, but it's not something I don't think we need. We know what we're going to, you know. We've received all of this. If there's all of this support against, where is it?
Well,
we haven't seen any of it. It hasn't come
Councilmember
to
Borneman,
the council.
I don't think people are sending their objections directly to you because you proposed it, but I will say that we have received comments on both sides. It is not one-sided, and there is concern that this is special interest, and there is concern that every single person, no matter what we walk into, whether we're council members or on a planning commission or whatever it is, there is opportunity for bias in every situation. It also means that people come into it with a different level of education in an environment, and I think that there is an opportunity for bias and special interest in regardless of what role you take in, so this just kind of makes me a little uncomfortable. I would prefer that we took it another step forward. Councilmember Barker.
So my comments weren't so that we could hear, we're making a change to our citizen group. So it wasn't about getting people who are opposed or for it. It's just getting a bit broader of a consensus. And I do recognize we have to look at, and which I hope will take this a step further, all of our commissions and boards. It's something that we really need to do with. And I'm glad we're taking this first step. But I also think that it was the people that we've heard from are the people that are aware and plugged in. And just out of respect to our community, we're making a change to a citizen committee. And we may see very little feedback, and then we move forward and we know that we said, yes, we sent this out, everybody got appropriately noticed, and we'll see where we go from there. But because of the citizen committee, that was my only question for council.
Councilmember Lillipust.
I guess I'd like to draw attention to what we're not changing. We are not changing any of the duties or powers of the Planning Commission. What we are not doing is the way that they are picked and the way that they are approved. What we are not doing is changing the historical composition of the Planning Commission, which has always, almost always, had a reasonable balance, sometimes formally watchdog and sometimes not formally watchdog. None of those things are changing. So I see us as less as changing things than as making sure things don't change, that we adhere to long established practices of balance, long established practice of not overbalancing the commission. So I think of us as not making great changes, but actually kind of, officializing tradition.
Yeah, I wanted to say this last time we talked about it, but I didn't. But over the last 23 years that I've been here, I've only seen one person, I will not mention any names, it's been a long time ago, only one person get one no vote in all that time. So, nothing's really broken on that end of it. I would never want this council to be in charge of picking planning commission members. I watched the county council meetings when they pick planning commission members, and I don't want to go through that at all. I think the way we have it set up is fine. I think it's unfortunate, and I feel bad for the sitting members of the Planning Commission, because it is unfortunate that it is perceived that way, and it is that way, and they do what they do, and that's their business. But it's been brought up, and it's widely known that this sort of action, I think, is necessary. I think we do need to change this and to make it clear what it's all about. And I agree with April. This should not be the only board or commission we look at. Over time, we don't really spend much time looking at boards and commissions. We have a hard time getting people to come on those. But I just want to emphasize what Terry did when he first brought it up. This has absolutely nothing to do with the people that sit there now. They have done a great job, but it doesn't take a road scholar to figure out that the makeup perceptually does not look right in the decisions that they have to make. And then that's unfortunate, and it'll keep happening if we don't put it in language. And I can't ever remember working on changing language at all on the Planning Commission. So, and as far as the public hearing is concerned, I could go either way, but I have to agree with Terry and Michael a little bit. To have a public hearing on this, it's not a big, huge change. It's we all get emails from everybody. We know how they feel about it, but so I would probably err on the side of just passing this now and not having a public hearing.
Any other comments before we take a vote? Oh, sorry, Councilmember Barker, and okay, Councilmember Barker.
So, and I don't know, it might be more appropriate after we all vote on this. I think regardless, it's been brought up a couple times that there can be bias on all sides. And one thing that in bringing this forward to all of our attention was looking at all the different ways that you can look at a planning commission and reduce those bias. One is adding a code of ethics, and the American Planning Association has one. Several different groups have them. It's just one more way that, we're looking at the bias from a development potential, but there could be bias in all sorts of ways. So I'd be interested, and I don't know if it's appropriate to do it now or wait till we vote on this, to ask staff to bring back a potential for a code of ethics if it's necessary, or if it wouldn't work for this group at a previous work session, and we could determine if that might be like a 2.4, 2.070. So every time a new planning commissioner comes on, they sign on to the code of ethics that talks about you're working for the community and for the betterment of the community, those types of things.
Yeah, I would think probably considering it after, since we have a motion on the table right now that we're considering that.
Okay. Mayor Kelly, did you want to say anything?
Well, as you know, I'm not happy about this at all. Not because, well, I mean, basically because I think the people that have been unanimously supported for the Planning Commission, as Jean read the history, have done a good job, and I haven't seen any, and nor would I appoint anyone that I believe is looking to benefit personally for what they do. Now, we've all know people in public life who are doing that. So I'm the last one that would say that that wouldn't happen. First of all, I absolutely support the APA ethics. We expect people to follow that. That's part of the conversation when we talk to people about being on the Planning Commission. So regardless of whatever you want to do, I'm going to have us start formally doing that just because. Before we get into just the specifics of what would happen between you passing this and me reappointing people that have done a good job on the Planning Commission, I also want to say that that might be something that we can talk about doing for all of our boards and commissions without the council getting into developing criteria for every board and commission. You guys approve about half of the 200 people I appoint. Hopefully, if there's any concerns or questions about anybody, that those come up to me, which they do sometimes through staff and through the community, or if there's something that I can talk about with an appointee ahead of time saying, this has been a problem. If that continues to be a problem, I'm going to have to remove you, so you got a chance to do this. I do that with members too, because I think it's important for everybody to understand when they're on a board or commission, no matter what their occupation, no matter what their advocacy has been, they represent the public interest of the city. That's the most important thing. So, having said that, we looked at the existing Planning Commission members. Phyllis is a realtor, Ali is a consultant, Tom is an architect, Garrett is a contractor, Jeff owns rental property, but his principal business is consulting on waste management systems. And this does not apply to Lisa, nor does it apply to Steve. And so Phyllis and Ali are up for reappointment. Tom will be termed out April of 17, so next April. And Jeff stayed on only so he could go through the comprehensive plan. He was going to resign before he got reappointed last time, but he made a good faith effort to stay on the commission because he knew it was going to be a difficult year if we had a whole bunch of new members. But he is ready to resign and move on. And so as soon as we have a replacement for that position, then he's ready to step off the commission. I think that the people that are up for reappointment, which are Phyllis and Ali, have done a good job. They were all approved unanimously. They're finishing their first term, and I would like to reappoint them to the commission. The only problem would be that Tom is not off the commission until April. So I guess one of the things I'm asking is that we would leave, that this would not take effect until Tom resigns, because then we would just have 3 people on the commission that met the criteria that you've indicated you want. And I don't see that any of those people, I mean, I will be nominating them, and if I have to, maybe I'll ask Tom if he minds getting off a few months early, which I don't really want to do, but he doesn't want to continue, and the other people do. So I guess that's the one consideration I have, believing that I don't really think it's necessary to do this, and I feel like I would like to support the people that you all supported to be on the Planning Commission that have been making some really hard decisions in the last couple of years. So that's all I had to say. And then I don't know if you want to let Rick make some comments, or if you have any questions for Rick.
If I might, to make a few comments. Although the sitting planning commissioners may have differed in opinion from staff to date, I've always respected their point of view, and I always believe that they truthfully tried to act in the best interest of the city. And I think that's being acknowledged by council. My concern is that the 3 remaining members who now are designated representatives of the building community might choose to represent that point of view. And while that may be appropriate or not appropriate based on the issue, it shouldn't be exclusive. I'm very supportive of developing a code of ethics that would talk about all the commissioners, regardless of their role or composition, looking at the broader city's best interest first before they look at their specific field or their issues. I don't think the intent of council, as I understand it, is to say these 3 remaining individuals are representatives of the building community and have to act in that function. I believe that's the case and certainly would welcome a confirmation of that. Thank you.
Any other comments? Okay. Councilmember
I
Barker?
think that Rick asked for a confirmation from the council about the existing members. Did you not?
I asked for, you're creating in the proposed ordinance, council's purview is to do this, is to create designated a maximum number of positions for specific folks involved in the development or building industry itself. But they're not designated representatives from that. And I'm asking for a confirmation of that. And then we would incorporate that into the code of ethics.
Okay. Councilmember Barker, then Lillquist.
Well, for myself, they're bringing so much more to the table than just their positions. I mean, many have, I think Ollie has lived here his entire life, has deep family roots and connections. Yeah, and so I would prefer nobody is representing one single interest. That's my preference. And once we get through this conversation, I do have a question in regards to the ordinance.
Councilmember Lillquist.
Yeah, the ordinance does not say, and I do not support the idea that planning commission members are representatives for their profession. Each of us, except for Roxanne, is elected from a particular district, but I don't just represent my district. I try to bring everything in my background forward. I expect that in every planning commissioner. So yeah, the idea of representation, that's not what we're talking about. We're just talking about balance, so we have a diversity of backgrounds, and they can represent every aspect of their humanity when they come forward.
Mm-hmm.
Councilmember Borneman.
Yeah, and I agree exactly with what Michael was saying. People may have seen a letter that was sent to the council from David Auer, who had been a past planning commission member and chair of the planning commission. And he talked about, in the past, there was kind of a unwritten rule with planning commission that there were 3 slots that were dedicated, just like this is written up. And when somebody came off from the industry, another industry person was appointed for those 3 people. And it's wasn't written down, but that was pretty much how things were followed. And it wasn't with the intent that it's just for them to come and represent just the building industry. It's because they do have special knowledge and other things about that, about the building community and things that are important to have on that commission. Like it's important sometimes to have, legal expertise on certain commissions or other kinds of things. But it doesn't make, as Michael pointed out, my district kind of rings around the university. It's the 5th ward. But I'm not appointed just to represent that. I'm elected, and I'm here to represent the whole of the city, and that's what our intent is with this. Does that help, Rick? Thanks.
Councilmember Hamel.
I think that was the intention, well, what I was trying to get at when I introduced item C, that the membership of the commission should, to the extent practical, reflect a broad range of opinion, experience, and expertise with the objective of providing sound advice representative of the citizenry. So it is that broader component. It's not siloed representation.
Mayor Kelly?
And I agree with that, and I agree with that language that you've put forward. But Terry just used the word slot, and slot slot to me means something a little bit different. I think you've reassured me that you don't mean slot, that you mean they should look out after everything. But it's just, to me, it's hard to understand why we have to pick on these certain people. Whatever it was before, being part of the development community doesn't matter at all to me when it comes to appointing the best person. So that was never my interest, that we have 3 people that would represent the building community. But having said that, I'd like a response maybe after you vote to explain, tell me how I should deal with this transition, or how you would, if you can accommodate my recommendations on this transition time.
Councilmember Barker.
Just 2 clarifications as I read through this. It does say for profit, so I do want to clarify that the 3 positions that would get taken up with anybody remotely involved in development will not include, if we're able to get representation, say from Colshan Land, somebody who works for Colshan Land Trust or Opportunity Council, because of the nonprofit. Is that correct? This would not, they would not be put into that bracket?
I don't know. We originally thought that they were in that, but I'm not sure. It doesn't, yeah. You know, I guess it's that they're not for profit, so it wouldn't be, yeah. They're not making their living off that, yeah.
Is that what council is agreeing to, that the nonprofit community would not be included in these 3 positions? Okay, thank you. That was important.
Yeah.
I had one more.
Yeah.
So employees, and I just want us to be clear when we do this. So I read through, the Neighborhood Coalition group had sent some studies forward that were done by a professor at Drake University, and actually called the professor at Drake University to understand better what his intent was. And by his 3rd article, he wrote 3, all relating to Planning Commission and this bias, and why it's so important that, you know, we take it a step further. He starts to remove language from being the development community, and he starts to replace with white collar versus blue collar. And he starts to really get into the understanding of, you know, even if we get rid of these biases, what we generally tend to have are people in more white collar positions, and it's people that are of a breadth of that social economic diversity in the community that all need to be represented. So as I went through on the internet, I was trying to understand, you know, what are all these positions that we're restricting to 3 because of the bias, and I understand the intent of the ordinance. But when it got down to employees, I think, and the point that the professor brought up, he thought maybe that's going toward that surrogate, the person who might not want to be part of the 3, but they're the secretary of the main business owner, and so therefore you would say employees, so that surrogate person wouldn't get onto. I think that there's a way to deal with the surrogate issue if somebody's trying to get double representation, or coming in as an employee or a wife or a partner, because through the code of ethics. My concern is when you look at employees of all of this, you're talking about a lot of blue collar positions, and I'm not quite sure that that's the intent of what we're trying to get at. You're talking about the roofers, the tilers, I mean, if you can just think about construction and all the things, people that work for the architect firm all the way down to the secretaries, I want to make sure that our intent is correct, and that we're really going to get what we want, and we're not going to run into an unintended consequences. So that employees for me is my only sticking point. And I just want to make sure that we're all aware of how far that goes down. And if it's truly we're worried about a surrogate or somebody who is representing that community, we should state that, and not therefore take on all the employees of a particular consultant or architect, or, I mean, it really goes quite far. I mean, to a point where we've said here a landscaper and an environmental consultant. I'm not sure that that's necessary, but I'd like to hear comments from council on that.
And Councilmember Lillquist has his hand up right here, so I'll let you take
My comment is you could have a roofer, a plumber, a carpenter as the 3 representatives. There's no reason why the representatives need to be the money behind the development, I think it'd be great if we had a roofer, a plumber, and a carpenter on the planning commission. I think they would bring real-world experience both in the construction trades and in life. So this is not a rule against the employees. They're included as valuable people with the same useful on-the-ground perspective.
Mayor Kelly.
So you're saying that, but they'd be one of the three, correct? Is that what you're saying?
Seems to me like there would be an employee in a corporation principally dealt in, say, construction. So yeah, if you're a carpenter, you're in the building trades, and we need to hear from you. You need to be on the commission, just not all of you.
I want to get back to the mayor's request. Which two want to be reappointed? Phyllis and Ollie. Garrett's already been, he's not up for reappointment. And Lisa's on, and Jeff is leaving at the end of this year. Oh, he wants to leave.
As soon as we get someone to take his place. Jeff Brown has requested to leave the Planning Commission, but he did stay on. He was reappointed and stayed on for I don't even know if I reappointed him. He did not say he wanted to resign during the comprehensive plan because he had experience doing that, and I really appreciated the fact that he said he'd stay, but that wasn't my request. He prefers going.
And Tom's leaving in April. His term's up in April, and he's leaving too.
Well, I think he's
termed out.
That's right.
Yeah.
How many terms is it? 3?
I don't know
I think it
offhand.
is.
Yeah, 2 sounds right.
What I can say is...
I remember years ago, though, not to throw out names, somebody did serve on there 10 years, so that's more than 2 terms, but maybe that was just maybe we gave him another term or something. I don't know.
Or maybe we made the rule after that.
That's very possible, like we're doing now. Uh-oh, there's Uncle Greg. He knows all this.
Good afternoon, Greg Ocken. It used to be 2 6-year terms, which is why someone was on for 10 years. Yeah, it's the limit of 2 4-year terms is the limit now.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Rick?
Yeah, if I might, there is a good efficacy for continuing the sitting, even with this change pending. We want to continue folks who have the touch base to the comprehensive plan, especially in the next year or so. We'll be bringing forward some things that will be implemented. I doubt we'll be bringing anything forward in the next 4 months that will be specifically from that. There's some ongoing work that's going forward. But continuity is very important for a planning commission, as you can understand, certainly for a council. And these reappointments would assure it. But I think the intent here is to come into compliance with the known outcome in April.
Councilman Borneman, did you have
Yeah,
something
what
else?
I'm kind of wondering, and just kind of thinking, is I'm not sure of how you would do this. If we pass this, and I'm reasonably sure we're going to pass this now, and if we were to do that, how we would, well, I think we would pass this, and then, well, maybe this is what I should ask legal first. If we pass this as written, can we pass something that is a waiver that says, these 2 being reappointed with the stipulation that the one in April will not, that total will be 3
Well,
at that time?
and if in fact I went against my word and did not follow the law, you could reject the person I brought forward. So that will never be a problem. Or you could potentially make this, it takes effect in April, so you don't have to pass anything else. It'll just all stay the same. And then in April, the rule of 3 will apply.
Oh, God, we're back to the rule of 3 again, aren't we?
Yeah, we got
In
it.
a different way.
Peter?
So yeah, just to kind of lay out the options, I mean, we have a section 2, which kind of addresses something that's not an ongoing thing. You could put something specifically in section 2. You could make it effective at a later date. You could hold back third and final to a later date. You have lots of options in that.
Yeah.
Councilman Bourne.
I would be willing to pass this with of an effective date of April, knowing that if we have, we have the votes that if there's any changes, that would reassure other people that, we have to confirm anyway, so that would be fine with me. So would we add it to, do we need to add it to this, Peter?
Yes, sort of the normal course, any ordinance is effective 15 days after third and final, so you would want to add the effective date. You could just add it to section 2, the effective date of the ordinance shall be fill in the blank.
Yeah, so I will do this, but I really understand the importance of experiencing continuity with some things, and that's why I'm here this term.
I really want to reassure the council that regardless, when you pass an ordinance, it's my responsibility to implement it. So there was never any thought on my part of taking advantage of the fact that I'm asking you to. I just want to make sure everybody understands that. I thought I might have heard something.
Councilmember Barker, then Board.
So if this is left probably till third and final, not happening till April, or if so, could we leave public comment open, or are we doing it where we're going to pass it and we're just saying not into effect until April? Okay.
So I will make a motion that we add a section here, wherever legal thinks it should go, that this ordinance will take effect on April 1st.
Second. April Fool's Day. Oh, that's reassuring, isn't it?
When's the term?
Does that work?
When does his term up?
Yeah. April.
We don't know.
Well, I think the first of the month would be probably.
Okay.
Greggy knows.
Greg is going to speak to that.
Tom's term is up April 1st.
Thank you.
Okay. All right.
Okay. Any other discussion before I ask for that additional vote? Okay.
Second.
Okay. Thank you. So we have a motion in front of us to add the amendment that this will not go in effect until April 1st, 2017. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 7-0. Okay, back to our original motion for the ordinance with 3 changes. And before we vote for this, I just wanted to say that I think that the current planning members have all done a really great job. And I want to commend them for the work and the hours and the volunteer that they put into this, because it takes a lot for people to do this job, and I just want to acknowledge them. And I also want to say that, anyone can have a bias that does not have an interest for all the citizens of Bellingham. So we can't just assume that everyone's there for the right reasons or the wrong reasons, and we have to give people the benefit of the doubt that they're willing to be engaged and volunteer and put their heart into the city. So I just want to acknowledge people who do that on our committees. Councilmember Murphy.
I just hope we really will get good and diverse people at our tables. We need this input and we need this involvement.
Okay, so the motion in front of us is to pass the ordinance with the 3 changes in languages. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries 7-0. Okay, item number 5 is the options for adopting a Bellingham flag. The city has been asked to adopt an official City of Bellingham flag, and direction is requested as to whether staff should proceed with 1, drafting a resolution for the adoption of the unofficial city flag, 2, drafting a flag ordinance that will officially adopt a city flag, or creating a formal competitive contest to choose a design for a flag. Should council request the ordinance, the mayor asks that a public hearing be held on the proposed flag. We did have a presentation by the flag designer Brad Lockhart, and I think everyone is familiar with this subject. And then Mayor Kelly, it does have you down here. Did you want to say a few comments about this before, or as I, or do you want me to just turn this over to Peter?
The only thing I would say is in the ordinance, it gives the options of what you can do. You could make it the unofficial flag and let people hug it and kiss it and love it just like they do now, because it's everywhere. Which would be my preference. You could make it the official flag, and then if you made it the official flag, we would have to write some kind of an ordinance about what was expected or not expected of the city to do with it, like where we would use it. We can't fly it down in the federal flag plaza and stuff like that. And then the other thing is, if you wanted to adopt an official flag that the city of the city that the city controlled, or not controlled, but make sure we have all the participation, then we could do that. But I would say my preference, my recommendation is that we adopt it as the unofficial flag and let everybody use it any way they want, always. So it did get replaced by the Seahawks flag on the Granary building today, but that's only because Rob Fix is a Seahawks fan. It almost looked like the Seahawks flag. So those are the three options that I said I'd bring back to you, and I think it's up to council to determine what they want to do. And excuse me.
Terry, did you want to add a few comments as well?
Yeah, I guess. We originally brought this forward because we've been getting a lot of comments from a lot of people in the city about this specific flag, about Brad Lockhart's design flag, the flag that was kind of adopted by the Downtown Partnership when they had a flag contest. And since then, it's been, you see it flying everywhere. You go into the co-op and there's the bags with the flag on it. You see it, flying at the Herald Building and all these different places downtown on this this specific flag. And we've gotten a lot of comments from a lot of different people regarding this. So, and we've had presentations here, so I thought it's probably time for us to make a decision. Is this something we would like to adopt? It is kind of the unofficial flag of Bellingham right now, and Brad has put it in the public domain so anybody can use his design, which I guess kind of his actions of doing this kind of encompasses what I feel is the selfless spirit of many of our citizens in Bellingham, of being willing to do that. So we don't have to make it the unofficial because it is the unofficial. I think it's more the question of, do we want to adopt this as Bellingham's, the city flag? And right now, we don't have a city flag. You go to any of the AWC meetings, and they have, at the beginning of the opening meetings, all the different cities walk in with their official flag that they have adopted. Bellingham doesn't have one, not that we necessarily need one, but I think this one really encompasses a lot that is Bellingham. It is a unifying kind of flag, and I think that's something that Bellingham has been pretty well. It incorporates the design of the three communities that came together to be Bellingham. It encompasses the First Nations whose land land that we currently occupy in Bellingham. It encompasses the spirit of the water that surrounds us. So I think it's a very good design, and I think it's just up to us to make a decision. What would we like to do? do we want a flag? Do we want this flag, or do we want to go in a different direction? I kind of heard from so many and kind of had a really good idea if we throw it up to the public what kind of response we're going to get. So I would like to see us go out on a positive note this year with supporting something that's been supported by so many in the community.
Councilmember Lilliquist, Barker, then Hamel.
Thank you. I think it's a nice design, and as you say, Terry, it's got some very good symbolism. I think that I would definitely support a resolution for us to support, endorse, and embrace this flag. I don't want to go too far and wrap it in regulations and make it too official and kind of take away part of the charm. And so it's a bottom-up idea that came from our communities and embraced by our community. So I would like to take the softer step of officially passing a resolution, endorsing, embracing, whatever. But I don't think we need regulations. I think making it too official would sort of almost, ruin some of the spirit. But without some act of official acknowledgement, then I think we kind of like drop the ball when it comes to our court. So I'd like to do something to officially support, endorse, and embrace this flag without wrapping it in regulations or rules or requirements or telling city employees how to display the flag in a proper fashion. We don't need to go that far.
Councilmember Barker, then Hamel.
I like your comments, Michael. Mine are for staff. In those two options, what are the costs associated with us going down this road in time if we were to officially adopt versus a resolution? Are there any unintended consequences as for setting us up for litigation because somebody feels they didn't have the opportunities to submit their idea for a flag? Do you see any things like that that we need to think about before we make this decision?
Yeah, Peter Rufato, Legal Department. I can't answer the cost question so much. I don't see any risk in litigation for someone not having an opportunity to be in some contest or something like that. I know that Mr. Lockhart expressed that this was for everyone to use. He was happy to do that. He's since put it in the public domain. I would probably want to have something just in writing if the city were to adopt this as their official flag before it was the final ordinance occurred to make sure that we have some protection in that respect. But I don't foresee a problem getting that. And you don't have to have, responding to Michael, you don't have, we put some samples in there. You don't have to have those limitations or procedures or policy. But
good to know. Councilmember Hamel, Murphy, then me.
All right. Mr. Rufato, answer my question. Thanks.
Okay.
Just a little concern I have as a tribal member is I don't know if this has gone through cultural resources review on part of the tribes. And if you're planning on using Nooksack and Lummi's name as a part of explaining the flag, as a part of our story with this, I would encourage that.
Thank you for that clarification, Peter Rufato, because when I was trying to do some research on adopting a city flag, a lot of the things that pertain to it is that now the city owns it. That means other people can't sell it. And that means you have to buy it through the city, and that means that we designate how and where and why it's applied. So if you're telling me that we don't have to have those regulations, that was kind of part of my concern. I thought it might be easier to adopt it as the unofficial flag. That way people can buy it and put it wherever they want and do whatever they want to it. So that was kind of more my quirky, this is the way we do it in Bellingham. So I just want to understand that that is the case. We could still have that if it was official, or it would have to be unofficial to not have all those restrictions on it.
I don't think that designation, unofficial, official, does anything with respect to restricting use.
That's interesting to know. Thank you. Mr. Knudsen.
Yeah, my original thought was, well, we better open it up to everybody and have a contest. But boy, talk about underdogs now. With this out there, as long as it's been, as many people have gotten involved in it. So, whatever we can do to make it, I don't know, whatever.
Councilman Borneman, then Lillquist.
Yeah, really, official, unofficial, really makes no never mind to me one way or another with it, because it's unofficial. If we adopt this as our unofficial flag, we can still fly it. We can have a flag that we use and embrace that, whatever. Is that correct, Peter? Then I move that we adopt Bradley Cooper's design as the unofficial flag of Bellingham.
Bradley Lockhart.
Bradley Lockhart. Oh, sorry. Oh, did I say? Yes.
We'll take that amendment.
Yeah.
Councilmember, I hear your motion. Somebody want to second that, or just move on to the next?
Second?
Okay. Councilmember Lillquist, then Barker.
I kind of wish you hadn't seconded it, because I agree. I want to support this too. I just think we should maybe write it up in a form of a resolution and have it brought back as a resolution. And maybe vote on at the next meeting, and I would reserve the right to, first of all, do what Councilmember Murphy said, is check first. I think it won't be a problem, but I don't know. So let's have it written up as a resolution. Does that sound good?
I will change my motion to that we
And then I'll
have this
drop my
drawn up
second
in a
because
proper
there's no
resolution and brought back.
I'll drop my second because there's no motion now.
Yeah, if that's, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Councilmember Barker.
So that was my concern, is that Marie and I
Yeah,
just
that's
recently,
what I kind of meant, but.
Marie and I just recently went to a training on cultural humility, and it's those little things that we need to be really responsive to. So I think in the two things we clearly need to clear up before we have our resolution are one, making that clear with Mr. Lockhart, am I saying it correctly, that he's relinquished all responsibility with that, and that won't come back, and then as well as having staff reach out to both of the tribes and ensure with his description if this is culturally appropriate.
And I was leaning toward an unofficial just because of all the regulations that I felt might come with, and also it hasn't been vetted by everyone, like Councilmember Murphy said, so that makes me a little bit uncomfortable. And I'm not sure what some of the unintended consequences could be, so I would definitely be more comfortable as the unofficial city flag, but it has my 100% support.
Yeah.
Councilmember Borneman.
Yeah, I can't speak for Mr. Lockhart, but when he did do his presentation here, he did clarify that he had received, I don't know if permission's the right word or what it was. He had been in contact with Nooksack tribe and with the Lummi tribe about it. So that's all I know.
Yeah, and contact is different than approving using the name. That's the exact issue that campaigns and all kinds of organizations have run into, and I just don't want Bradley to run into that, that's all.
Yeah, no, I that's why I'm saying he had stated whatever, and, so that's all I know.
So we have a motion to draft a resolution. Oh, wait, no?
Yeah.
Oh, I thought you rejected your motion, sorry.
I thought you...
There's no motion on the table. There's no motion.
There is no motion. Anyone?
What?
Terry suggested to modify his motion if there's no objection that it can be modified. But you have to say, is there any objection?
Is there any objection to the modified motion?
We're good.
Which is asking for a resolution to adopt this
I
as an
object.
official.
I think that's premature. I think we have a step. We have neighbors. We need to be sensitive. It's part of that cultural community. I think we can get back there. This is not time sensitive. I think it sets a certain precedent when you say, oh, we're already developing the resolution, and by the way, we're hoping that you'll accept it, versus let's go out. I don't know if it's staff or Mr. Lockhart that needs to go out and make that ask. And then as council, we appropriately make that next step. That's my preference.
Just remember that we are proposing at this moment the unofficial. So unofficial means that we don't necessarily need everyone's approval because we are not making it our official flag. Councilman Boyle.
So I will now withdraw my previous motion, and I will make the motion that we direct legal to draw up a resolution designating Bradley Lockhart's flag as the unofficial flag of Bellingham.
Second.
Second.
Are you asking for a second? Or did you second it?
I just second.
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Councilmember Hamel.
I'm still unclear as to how we proceed forward in terms of having some sensitivity towards the tribes because they are included. I would want to have that confirmed before we take steps forward. And I'm in support of this flag. I think it's a great design. I think everyone in Bellingham appears to have embraced it. That's not the question. The question to me is what is the status of contacting the tribes versus the tribes saying, you know, they bless this flag or they approve of this flag. That's all.
Wouldn't that be part of building the resolution, reaching out to them, and then we wouldn't have anything to worry about before we vote on it? So I think so.
Councilman Bordeman.
If we bring this forward, because we're not voting on the resolution now, we're just voting on having it adopted. It will come back to us. In the meantime, we can contact Mr. Lockhart, and I'm assuming he's probably watching right now, and then he can fill us in on the steps that he has taken with that, because I know he has taken those steps. So.
Council members, any other discussion before? And so the motion in front of us is for staff to draft a resolution adopting this flag as the unofficial Bellingham flag, with the caveat that we are going to ensure we have permission through Bradley Lockhart's. We will leave that up to him to make sure that he has permission from all the tribes to use this flag or use this representation. Okay, everyone comfortable with that? All right, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries 7-0. Okay, item number 6 is the adoption of the City of Bellingham's 2017-2018 budget. The revised Code of Washington requires the City of Bellingham to adopt a budget prior to December 31st, 2016. The attached ordinance includes the work plan and appropriation proposed in the 2017-18 preliminary budget, plus the adjustments outlined in the attached summary of changes sheet. And I'm going to turn this over to Brian Henshaw, our Finance Director.
All right, thank you. Brian Henshaw, Finance Department. So for the past 2 months, we've been meeting and discussing the next work plan for the 2017-2018 biennial budget. We've had 2 public hearings on the one on the revenue and another one on the proposed budget. One thing that we do need to do today, Pinky, is close the written public hearing comment portion, so I don't want to lose track of that. I have not received any written public comments. I'm not aware of any that came to council either. So I'm here to answer questions. On page 32 of the packet is the tabular form of the biennial budget. You'll see it listed by fund with the estimated beginning reserves of each fund, and then in the next column, the revenues anticipated for the next 2-year time period, and then also the expenditures for that 2-year time period, and an estimated ending reserve, and then a change in reserve balance and a percentage change. I will just point out that the current total budgeted citywide for 2 years is $532.3 million. We would be using reserves, and we would expect to have the ending reserve balance of $102.7 million. And then I also listed out the general fund portion of that, which is $157.4 million. And we will have estimated ending reserves of approximately $15 million in 2 years. With that, the other thing I would point out to you on page 35 of the packet is the changes that have occurred since we printed the preliminary budget in the beginning of August. You will see all of the items identified by fund and a brief summary of what is entailed there. Most of these have to do with just purely corrections during the time period. As soon as we publish it, we start going through it again. We identify things. I will point out just in advance the $15 million for the bond revenue. Originally, we anticipated having to go to the bond market to issue debt to pay for the pre-treatment plant at the water plant. Subsequent to this, and then Public Works was successful in getting a loan, a Commerce loan, so we are removing the $15 million that was budgeted on this for bond revenue. It happened to be in there twice, which was also a mistake, so that's a big number. But the other ones are just carry forwards or changes that we identified during the process. So, any questions?
Councilmember Lilliquist.
I have a small question and then a bigger question. The small question is, during the budget deliberations, we talk about putting in the last minute an energy upgrade for these facilities, and did that require a budget amendment, and is that related to this? Because we're removing it from 2017 and pushing it into 2016. I can't remember exactly how that came out.
Great question. I'm going to defer to Ted.
We looked at that. Ted Carlson, Public Works Department. You may recall during Marty Mulholland's presentation, there was a project here in the chambers to replace the projectors as well as make some improvements for hearing impaired, a hearing loop. The idea that we had at the staff level was to include the lighting project in that. Once we made the determination we weren't going to be able to get it done this year, just based on our procurement and our contracting process. So we proposed to use the already included 2017 proposed budget along with Marty's technology fund to make those improvements here.
Councilmember Lilliquist.
So the larger issue has to do with EMS funding, and when this budget was written, the EMS levy had not passed, and now the voters have approved it. So the EMS system is financially supposed to stand on its own 2 feet. The county executive has indicated, they signaled that their general fund subsidies will be stopped. I'm wondering what sort of budget changes we need to make, because I believe we also should be stopping or discontinuing our general fund subsidy. How is that budget amendment process going to take place?
Brian Henrich, Mayor's Office, and we spoke about this very briefly, that there's a contractual obligation we have with Whatcom County today. We know that there's a number of items to be worked out as we, essentially the new system gets created. So I think in some ways, and I'll ask Brian to help me out, that I think for the city, in some ways, it's more of an accounting question. On the fund list that you'll see on page 33, Fund 470 is Medic 1. That's where our general fund subsidy, in essence, goes toward. And so as we work out the contractual details with Whatcom County, I think, and again, I'll ask Brian to help me out, I think what we envision is we would satisfy the contractual concerns and then bring forward that contract, and then in addition, any budget amendment ordinance would occur at that time as well.
Before we go too far in this, my understanding is the contract we have is requiring the county to pay us so that we then provide EMS services. It's not a contract that we pay them. That's a separate agreement.
Yep. So our transfer doesn't go to that EMS county fund. It goes from our general fund to our Medic 1 fund. So it's two different funds that you're referring to between what Jack Lau's quoted in the paper and what you're asking the question for. So right now, we budgeted all of the levies with unknowns, and so we left everything budgeted as we knew. Once the contract is signed with the county for the new service and the amounts, we would propose coming back to council with an amendment to the budget at that time. It doesn't change our internal accounting of how we are subsidizing the Medic 1 fund. So right now, the assumption is that we receive $1.6 million per unit. It costs us $1.8 million per unit on average, and that's why we're putting the $1 million from the general fund into the Medic 1 fund to cover all of those other costs associated with it that we are not currently receiving. So the first step is that we already have a contract. That contract goes through the end of the year, at least, without giving notice. It can carry on further than that. So
into 2017, you mean?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah. But they have to give notice prior to us just changing the contract. So we believe that we have a contract. We are obligated to continue with that contract until we know differently, and that's a process that needs to start with the county immediately to come up with a new contract amount.
I guess just to clarify,
Yeah,
that contract goes through 2018 and we can mutually agree to change it. Just to clarify, it's through 18.
I guess here's where I want to go on the bottom line is that right now, because of the not because of subsidy, because of all the expenses, including the subsidy, we have a general fund deficit. If indeed that contract was renegotiated and we were being fully subsidized, fully paid for the service we're providing rather than giving them a discounted rate that we have to subsidize, will that put us in the black or nearer to the black in the biennium? That's really what I'm hoping we might see.
Yeah. So depending on the timing and then what the final contract is, there are some unknowns there. It will certainly help. So right now that the 2-year budgeted deficit anticipated is $2 million, so that will go a long ways towards doing that. I will point out, though, that the savings will not probably be a full $1.1 million from just that, because we do allocate additional costs to that. So if we're going to start changing the structure between Medic One and the general fund, there's going to be other consequences that the general fund will have other expenses that we currently pay for through the Medic One fund. So there will be savings, but again, it'll depend on what the final contract amounts are and also the cost at the time that happens. And then we will do one budget amendment that would come back to you and would have all that to bring forward.
Okay, so that won't affect this budget, it sounds like, or we'll make those budget amendments once we know. I just want to understand what the administration believes we're seeking out of those contract renegotiations. Thanks, Kelly.
Well, what we're seeking is, excuse me, to use the funding that, this is my opinion, so just I'll put that out there, is to make sure that the funding that is coming from the new levy covers the costs. We know in the city of Bellingham that it may not cover all the things that we choose to do. I think that's what Brian was talking about. So, but that will be a choice that we will talk about as we're making that midterm adjustment in the budget. So I'm sorry if there was anything I said in the newspaper that sounded like I wanted to keep giving money to the county into their fund. As Brian made sure I understood, and I do, there's our emergency EMS fund and there's the county's EMS fund, and the money will still be coming to the city, and then we'll have a better idea in the next 6 months what effect that increase in revenue has. And I'd love it to be able to see our budget be more sustainable. So anyway, we'll talk about it, and hopefully in 6 months or before that, if we talk about it when we have the council retreat.
Thanks for the clarification.
Am I clearer now? What?
Can I add something?
Yes, Brian needs to add something because I wasn't that clear.
No, I just wanted to add that the EMS funding work group that Terry sat on and that Chief Newbold participated on, that gives us tremendous amount of guidance as we look towards creating this system. So if you don't have that, or I'd be happy to send that to you, but I would look to that from the perspective of we've laid out essentially what the system will look like and how it will function. I don't know, Terry, if you want to add anything to that. I just wanted to make sure that we've been given a tremendous amount of guidance to that point.
Yeah, and I don't have much to add to that. We kind of went through it, and it is, as far as I know, it's pretty much laid out there, and now it's a matter of, now that it passed, thank goodness it passed. Thank you, voters of Bellingham, for stepping up and carrying the whole county with this. Thank you for doing that. But now's the task of putting that together. And so until we get everything all written up, but the guidelines and the outline is there. Yeah.
Councilmember Murphy.
Brian, do you need a motion from us to close the public comment? Isn't that what you said earlier in your presentation?
I was just going to close it, or do you need a motion?
Yeah, before you take action on the actual ordinance, I would just recommend that we do that, close it. So anytime.
I'd like to make a motion that we close the public comment, please.
Second.
Second, anyone? Oh, you did. Thank you, April. All right, any discussion? Okay, we have a motion in front of us to close the public comment, our 2017-2018 budget. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 7-0. Councilmember Murphy.
Now I'd like to move that we adopt the 2017-2018 budget.
Second.
Any discussion? Okay, motion in front of us to adopt the 2017-2018 budget. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 7-0. Thank
Job,
you.
Brian.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We have one set of minutes in front of us today. This is for committee meetings on November 14th.
Move approval. Second.
Discussion?
I had one change.
All those in favor? Oh, sorry,
I
is there an
just
amendment?
had one change. In the conversation around Sanctuary City, that was my motion, not Dan's, if I remember that correctly.
Yes, it was.
The last page.
Okay, so we have a motion to accept the committee meetings from November 14th with one adjustment. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 7-0. Old or new business? Councilmember Borno.
I've got a couple items, and I'll do one first. And I'm going to pass this along. I just want to throw this out as to see if council is at all interested in this, and you can feel really free to say no. But I don't, this is just a framework because it was real rough as I threw it together before we came. We've received a lot of comments since the election of a lot of people being concerned about what this election means to them, what their rights are, what's going to happen, and other kinds of things with the city. And we'd received also a resolution that San Francisco passed that I thought was a little heavy-handed, but it got me thinking in terms of, does the council, this city has at least a recent history of being a very tolerant kind of city. We were one of the first cities in Washington to support to support same-sex marriages and rights for same-sex partnerships. We have been very open in pushing against bigotry and racial intolerance and other kinds of things. And basically this or something like this, just to say, to reassure the citizens that are concerned that we basically reaffirm those commitments that we have made to the citizens, that this is going to be a safe community. We will continue to work for a safe community. Nothing in this or language is anything that, you know, I'm solid on. It's just something, an idea to throw out to the council to see if there's any interest that we do that, to say to our citizens that we are going to be supportive of you. And I'll read this, you know, and this is, but I want to make it clear, it's not, this is not a resolution I'm asking for support, but just the basic idea so people know what I'm talking about. Okay.
I think our typical is you make a motion to put this into a work group and then the work group works on it. So
yeah,
is that your
if that's
motion?
what people are interested in,
That's
but I
typically
just
what we do.
But people don't know what I'm saying.
Why don't we do that? Why don't we move it to committee? Can we put you want to put a motion forward?
Yeah, I will do that. So, but should I?
Could we give everyone a chance to digest it and move it to committee, and then everyone can see it when it's produced in the packet?
For the record,
that's fine.
If Terry could just, I don't say read it, but just mention what it's about. The audience has no idea what we're even talking about yet.
Right, and that's what I've, yeah, so I won't go through this, but basically what I'm saying is a resolution or a possibility of a resolution that reaffirms our commitment that we will protect all citizens regardless of citizenship here, that we will, that Black lives, that concept matters here, and we will protect all citizens and work with citizens, and we will continue working with the police and our communities of color to improve relationships, that we will continue to embrace science as it applies to climate control, and we will continue to work on those issues to reduce our carbon footprint, those kinds of things. And so that's what that we just reaffirm those things to our citizens that are concerned.
I'd like to move that we would add this community commitment resolution to the community of the whole at a future council meeting.
I would just suggest that we actually put it in a work committee.
Yes.
That's just so that it doesn't end up, so it can really get worked on, and if this is, and then if that committee decides they want to work with staff further, and I mean, this is something that would need to go.
What about community and economic development?
No.
No?
I really believe the appropriate motion to put it in committee of the whole. I think what you're asking for, April, is what we've informally called work groups. Maybe 2 council members work on putting the agenda together, the agenda item. I think that's all we need. We don't need a committee. If 1 or 2 of you, or, Terry and somebody else, want to work on the agenda item, and we put it in committee of whole.
I'll volunteer to work with Terry on this.
Thank you.
Mayor Kelly.
I'm glad that you're going to be coming forward with something, because there are a lot of our community members that are asking, and they wanted me to do something, and I'd love to do something with the council instead of by myself. So I do think that we need to be very careful as we look at the wording, that the wording is very inclusive, and that it acknowledges the uniqueness of our city. But I agree that something like this could be helpful.
Councilmember Becker.
We already had the motion to have, and I know Mark's been looking into it, and I know Western's wanted to meet in regards to the safety of our residents that are not currently documented. So I see that there might be a matching in this, so I would just ask that we're sensitive with the work that Mark's been working on, and that might be a nice marriage of those 2 things.
Councilmember Horniman.
Yeah, and if it would please the council, if Dan and I work on this, I would be glad to also, we would be glad to work on it in conjunction with the mayor before we bring it back,
Okay.
With this.
Let's move on.
Okay.
Do you have something else?
Oh, yes, I do. I would really like tonight, if it would be possible, to observe a moment of silence. We lost Joe Yaver.
I didn't hear that.
This past week, and if people, I think most people on the council are familiar with Joe, and Joe he was a big figure in this community economically with SPIE, and as an environmental guardian, and just all around great guy. I mean.
Okay.
And so I would like if we could have a moment of silence.
I will let you lead that tonight,
Yes.
Terry. Okay.
That's it.
Anything else from anyone else?
Is this new and old?
Yes.
Old or new?
Old and new.
New or old?
So I'm assuming this already happens, but for our Parks and Recs Committee, now that we've had the Parks Pro Plan passed, I'm interested in having the Greenways Committee come and bring their strategic plan regarding that, especially since in our Parks Pro Plan we talked a lot about new equity measures, and I would like to see what that relates to in some of the underserved North End and what their plans are to make those connections. So I was hoping to get that at least in our Parks and Rec Committee for early in the year if possible.
So the Greenway Committee recently made a presentation on their work. They adopted, well, the council adopted a strategic plan for the Greenway 3 levy, which that strategic plan was related to acquisition of property to give some more guideline on where property was going to be acquired, but they operate under the umbrella of the Pro Plan. And if they do a new plan would be with the new levy, and looking at, we're going to be bringing forward next year a proposal on the projects that we're going to be working on with the Greenway 4 levy. but there's not a current strategic plan for them to bring forward to you other than you've already adopted.
Yeah, mine is as they were, as that process. I just wanted to make sure that was coming forward. I had some questions from constituents that wanted to make sure that we are aware of what the voters passed and that there wouldn't be any confusion as to what the intentions were. But then also under the umbrella of the PRO plan, we were moving forward on that idea of equity and acquisition, those types of things. So I just wanted to make sure that also got added in and understanding. The other point of this is that with the 2,500 units that are coming on board on the north side, it's even Dr. Baker has put out a request for community members to come forward and start looking at the concerns that we're already over full in our Cordata school, and we don't really know how many more students will be coming up. So the growth is rapid and it's happening, and I think this is a really nice time to look at that idea of the new strategic plan that would be coming forward, and then how that relates to property acquisition, development, and all that on the north side.
I think we should be very careful about a new strategic plan coming forward, because I think we all made it very clear when we talked, at least I did when I talked to constituents, that the best thing about this new Greenways levy is that it was building on all the community input and prioritization that we did on the PRO plan. So once the Greenways committee, they look at what the recommendations are from staff. So I think maybe if we waited until the Parks Board had gone through the process with the Greenways Committee and come forward to you, well, that might be leaving the administrative decisions to the administration about how this stuff comes forward. So if you'd like to make sure that you make a motion that you'd like to know as soon as possible what the plan is, and that will happen after the first of the year, that would be great.
Councilmember Lillquist.
Well, let me ask this slightly differently. The Greenways Commission has revised the original Greenways strategic plan, and we're in a revised version of it. It's several years old already. In the natural course of things, would there be a point at which the Greenways Commission would officially revise that strategic plan that would reflect Greenways 4? I'm not saying we'd do it by January, even right away. But in addition, there's also the ongoing work with the Parks level of service tools that not only informs Greenways decisions, but Parks plans in general. So in the natural course of things, when might that revision be, conducted?
We're going to be working with the Greenway Committee and the Park Board on the priorities for the next levy, but those priorities will be the same as the priorities in the Park Recreation Open Space Plan, which is adopted because that is our comprehensive plan. So all the equity issues will still apply, and looking at our study we're going to do on our individual parks will all tie into that as well. So I would think maybe mid-year next year, by the time we were able to come forward with a proposal for an expenditure plan for the next levy, although we may bring something forward sooner for some maintenance, capital maintenance items.
That's helpful. That's what I was looking for. Thank you.
Yeah, because it's usually once the levy gets passed, then we incorporate the resources into the plans that we've already worked on, and there's always an opportunity for council members to bring forward a specific issue to make sure we don't forget, but it really starts with the staff.
Anything else for old or new business? Seeing none, we are adjourned.